Good evening and welcome to Local Matters. Today is Wednesday, September 10th, and it kicks off our annual political discussion. Tonight we have the candidates for the Cowlitz Sheriff's position, and that is for the November 4th election. My name is Barry Verrill, and I will act as your host. With me, as usual, are our co-host, Mr. David Butcher. Welcome back, David.
Thank you, Barry. It's always good to come back after the summer off.
Nice long two-month break. Did you have a good summer?
We did a lot of watching ball.
Well, I'm glad you brought up ball because I have to ask you, are the Braves in the playoffs?
Well, you know, being Canadian, you may not get this, but actually the playoffs don't start until October.
Well, I knew that.
No, nobody's in the playoffs today.
But they're not actually in the playoff race right now. They're just
In the race. They were tied for the second wild card spot on the weekend.
Well, good luck.
Thank you.
The candidates for the sheriff are Mark Nelson and Darren Ullmann. Mr. Nelson is the incumbent, and I'll turn to David to explain how it's going to work tonight. Go ahead.
All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to have a 2-minute opening by each candidate. And we've drawn numbers here before the show, and Chief Nelson drew number 1. He'll be giving us the first open. Mr. Ullmann will follow, and then at the end we'll do the reverse order for the closing statement. In between, we'll ask some questions, alternating who goes first, and you'll have a couple minutes to respond on those. So if there's...
Might as well get right started.
That's it.
Sheriff Nelson, you're up first. You have 2 minutes for your opening, and speak directly to that camera.
All right. My name is Mark Nelson. I'm the Cowlitz County Sheriff. I've been in law enforcement here for about 37 years, coming up on 38. I was born and raised here in Cowlitz County. My family's here. I've raised my family here, graduated from Mark Morris High School, got my 40th reunion coming up Saturday night, so that'll be fun. Looking forward to that. Spent all of my, most of my career, I spent about 7 years with Longview Police, and then the rest of my career has been with the Sheriff's Office as a patrol deputy, done lots of other activities as a deputy, then as a patrol sergeant, detective sergeant, patrol captain, and was first appointed to the sheriff's position by the commissioners in 2009 and elected by the people in 2010, and have served as the sheriff since that time.
All right.
Thank you. Mr. Ullmann.
Hi, I'm Darren Ullmann. I'm currently a deputy with the Sheriff's Office. I've been with the Sheriff's Office now for about 13 years. I've worked just about every position in our office, from search and rescue to the civil service to the registered sex offender verification duties. Prior to coming into the Sheriff's Office, I spent a little time in the military. I'm a U.S. Army veteran. I was in the first Gulf War, where I received a Bronze Star during the Desert Storm. I was promoted to sergeant within 3 years of enlistment, and later got out of the Army and came home and raised my family in Kelso. I've had 3 kids go through Kelso High School, and have been really active in youth sports. In the past 17 years, I've coached soccer and football and baseball and every other sport that my kids went through. Also, I've been pretty active in our community. I'm currently on the board of directors at the Cowlitz County Historical Museum, and I'm the president of the Search and Rescue Coordinators Association for the state of Washington. So those are just a few of the things I do in my spare time, but other than that, I spend most of my time at the Sheriff's Office.
Thank you both. David, we should have drawn numbers to see who's going to ask the first question.
I always defer to you because you're a lot older than I am.
Oh, thank you. And the first question goes to Mr. Nelson first, and you can take up to 2 minutes to answer the question, although I don't imagine too many of these questions will take the full 2 answers, or 2 minutes. And this is a general question. Describe the major difference you believe between you and your opponent. And win or lose, what will November 5th look like for you personally?
Well, I would say that the major differences between my opponent and I are experience and qualifications. The experience is, I've been in law enforcement nearly 3 times as long as my opponent, and my experience has included that of being a supervisor. I went through a competitive peer testing and was promoted to sergeant in the sheriff's office. Supervised a patrol team, supervised our detective division, and handled a number of major investigations during the time, as you can well imagine, in detectives. I then was appointed as the patrol captain, which is an administrative position, and I oversaw all of the patrol division, which is the job I was doing when my opponent was hired. So having spent 7 years with the administration, going through the competitive process for the appointment as the sheriff, and then the last electoral process, and having been the sheriff, dealt with some pretty significant issues, not the least of which, of course, is our budgetary issues that we're facing. I think that the qualifications and experience are largely that. November 5th, I'm probably going to be like a lot of other people. I'm going to be out pulling down signs no matter what.
Thank you. Mr. Ullmann, same question for you. If you could describe the major difference you believe between you and your opponent, and what are your plans for November 5th?
Well, I agree that we have some pretty strong differences, and that's what makes this race interesting, because what I'm bringing to this is an entirely new perspective into the sheriff's office position. And the sheriff's office has been absolutely racked with budget cuts. I mean, there's no disputing that. But it's really time that we take a fresh perspective on that and begin to look at different ways of doing the job we're currently doing. And I've actually written a strategic plan for the future of the sheriff's office that we can use as a guiding post to get us to that next level. I understand there's been a lot of cuts and there's a lot of things that we can say we could do, but I think it's time that we step back and look at things differently and really bring in that new perspective and reanalyze how we can do it. We have to understand that there's no money coming. The budget cuts have been made. We're not going to be in flux with any great deal of money. So that's an important piece to remember. So we got to restructure the way we're doing business. Now, as far as experience goes, I have had a lot of leadership experience. Like I said, I'm currently the president of the Washington State Search and Rescue Coordinators Association. I've been working a lot with the museum on the board of directors. I also oversaw our reserve unit for a time and coordinated the 2011 Washington State Search and Rescue conference that was here in Cowlitz County, which was a huge success. We had 700 participants from all over the world and had reviews that people were saying that this was probably one of the best conferences that they've ever attended as far as organizational. So I bring a fresh perspective into organizing and a new dynamic that the sheriff's office really hasn't been used to. So.
And November 5th?
November 5th, hopefully we'll have all the signs down by November 4th, so November 5th will be a day of rest for me.
Okay.
Very good. So obviously, you both currently work for the Sheriff's Department, and the way they work elections around here, I don't know how they do it in Canada, but only one person wins. So Mr. Ullmann, if you were selected as sheriff, how does this impact the employment of your opponent?
Well, the sheriff's position is actually a unique position in that once you become elected, you're basically removed from the civil service rules. So my understanding is the sheriff doesn't not actually come straight back into the sheriff's office. Not that he's not welcome in the sheriff's office, absolutely. I mean, the sheriff has done a tremendous amount for our community and for the sheriff's office, and I have absolutely nothing but respect for him. But it will definitely be a change of pace if that does happen.
Thank you. And Mr. Nelson, how about you? If you win this election, how would that impact your opponent's employment?
He's going to keep doing what he's doing. His job remains the same. Mine does not. My job as far as serving in a law enforcement capacity in Cowlitz County would end.
You got a little more on the line, it feels like, then.
That I do.
One way to look at it. Thank you.
Coming right back to you with the next question, Mr. Nelson. Both of you have mentioned the budget cuts that you've experienced in the last 6 or 8 years now. And every department within Cowlitz County has had their budget reduced over the last few years, fiscal years. Is the Sheriff's Department adequately funded, and how do you propose to provide even more service with even less money?
Well, it's a great question. Are we adequately funded? I would say that if you're treading water in a river, you may be keeping your head above water, not drowning, but you're going downstream. So that's really where we're at. Can we continue to function as we are with our current funding? Sure, we're doing okay. We've made a lot of changes in the office. We have done some restructuring so that we can keep people on the street, keep them working, doing what they need to be doing out there. But we have taken on additional responsibilities in the last 4 or 5 years, and ones that we're stuck with doing. So are we adequately funded? Yeah, we're gonna answer calls. We're gonna be out there responding, doing what we'd like to do, but not the things that we would like to be doing. We're doing the things that we have to do. The things that we would like to be doing are addressing some other areas of our crime issues. We'd like to be addressing a couple of things that I've wanted to do for years, and have been in the plans that I have, and I don't want my opponent to think he's the only one who's had an experience with a strategic plan. But the things that we'd like to do, that I've wanted to do, is to have a traffic unit, and a unit that could address specific traffic-related issues in the county. One of the biggest complaints that comes in, although it may not be one of the biggest crime problems, is traffic-related issues. Those are the things that bug people the most. And then, of course, to have some street-level additional investigative unit. Those are all things that we've had on the back burner because we just haven't had personnel or funding.
Great. Mr. Ullmann, same question for you. Every department budget within Cowlitz County has had their budget reduced over the last two or three fiscal years. Is the Sheriff's Department adequately funded, and how do you propose to do even more services with less funding?
I agree with the sheriff that the budget is probably, I mean, we are getting by with what we have. Is it adequate? It's all in how you look at it, I suppose. We are able to provide the services we need to provide right now, but there should be more money. There really should be. I mean, in order for us to perform, to give the service to the community that we really need to be giving. The issue comes down to, can we provide more services with less? I think we can. And I think it's a matter of, if you remember the movie Apollo 13, when they walk into the room and they dump all these parts on the table and they say, this is what we've got, we don't have a choice, we have got to get these guys back down to earth. It's very similar here. We don't have a choice. We now have a very tight budget to work in, and it's time to rethink how we do our job. Our leadership model and the way we've done business has gone virtually unchanged since the 1980s. And so it's time to step back and look at how we handle calls, how we go after these criminals. And it's part of my strategic plan is exactly that, is addressing what we call the intelligence-based policing model, and looking at crime differently, and looking at ways of reutilizing our existing resources in a way that we can combat the crime that's increasing, the drug crimes that are increasing, the sex crimes that are increasing. We have to get a hold of those. Because the budget, like I said, is we're not going to get a big pot of gold somewhere down the road. What's going to happen is we're going to continue to lose financially, but we have to provide more services. If some bills are passed, it looks like we're going to end up probably doing more background investigations. And that's going to just absolutely strap the sheriff's office. But we have to do it. And if we have to do it, then we'll find a way. But it's going to be a matter of absolute restructure, reorganization, and reanalyze how we're doing our job, not just switching positions around, but how are we doing it, what's effective and what's not effective, and how can we cut some services if needed in order to provide the services that are absolutely necessary.
Great, thank you.
All right, Mr. Ullmann, which one do you think is more important, the enforcement or prevention of crime? And with round percentages, how much goes to enforcement and how much to prevention? What do you think?
I think the difference between enforcement and prevention, when the current law enforcement model that we're working under was first began, it began as a crime prevention model. And we have gone away from that simply because of budget restraints, personnel shortages. I mean, we can't do the job the way we would like to do it because of those issues. So we are probably in a 90% law enforcement mode as opposed to crime prevention. That's what I'm hoping to change. I'm hoping we can go back to a crime prevention model and really work at addressing crime, working with the community, getting people involved through mediums like Facebook and other social media avenues, and really bring that into the sheriff's office and get the sheriff's office more active in the community to bring those ties together so we can work together with the community and create this new model that will help in creating this crime prevention as opposed to strictly responding to crimes as they occur.
Gotcha. Thank you. Mr. Nelson, same question. What do you think is more important, the enforcement or the prevention? And how would you split the money between those two areas, and how do you think it is split now?
Well, the model that we are using is supposed to be, and has been over the years, a crime prevention model, and it's the model that's used nationwide. It is what is most common there. We do, I would guess that, I think that my opponent maybe was a little generous in the amount that's actually used for prevention, because I don't think that we use as much for prevention, but it is something that we are growing in and continuing to work with. We've introduced, we've started a Facebook page where we put information out. The Department of Emergency Management, which is also under the Sheriff's Office, under my authority, has a very, very active, one of the most active in the state, Facebook, Twitter. They're constantly putting out information to the community. And that information is both personal safety, emergency preparedness, crime prevention. All of those things are part of what goes out through the Department of Emergency Management. We're not quite up to speed that far with the Sheriff's Office Facebook page because it's only been up for about a year now, but it's getting better. We're moving forward with that. Our website is getting up and going a little bit more. We just switched to a new web company here within the past several months, the county as a whole. So all of the agencies have that. We're all still developing our sites. We recently put into place an online reporting system that is now available on our website. So crime prevention is a very, very important thing. People want to hear it. We do community meetings where we can connect with folks and try to answer some of those questions, but it's difficult to do in this environment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Nelson, right back to you with the next question. Should police forces be militarized with assault weapons, heavy armored vehicles, gas masks, rubber bullets, and is this necessary in Cowlitz County?
What's an interesting question because it's really all about perception. Should law enforcement officers have protective equipment? Should they have military-grade protective equipment? Is an absolute yes. Absolutely, law enforcement should have ballistic helmets. They should have gas masks. They should have vehicles that will withstand rounds coming at them because they need that for protection. It's the reason why law enforcement officers for years and years and years have worn ballistic vests. They are not bulletproof. They're bullet resistant. There are rounds, obviously, that will penetrate those, and we lose officers every year. Our officers killed by gunfire this year are up 52% as of today. That's pretty significant. That's over last year. So should we have those things? Absolutely, I think. should we be militarized is a whole different attitude. And no, I don't think that law enforcement needs to be militarized because we're a public service. The majority of what we do is serving the community. The majority of what we're doing is responding to people's call for help. They need some assistance, and that's what we're about. We need to be about serving them. Yet, more and more and more, the kinds of calls that we're getting are involving dangerous situations where officers are put at risk. And so do we want to provide the best that we can for our officers to protect themselves? Absolutely, we do. So when some of that material comes available, military comes available, we've taken advantage of a few things, but not to the degree that many other agencies have. But yes, our officers need to be protected.
Great, thank you. Mr. Ullmann, same question. Should the police forces be militarized with assault weapons, heavy armor, gas masks, rubber bullets, and is this necessary in Cowles County?
We should not be militarized, but I completely agree with the sheriff in that we need the armament, we need the protection. I've been in shootings, I've been in those situations. People, believe it or not, do shoot back at the police, and it's nice to have that protection. When we get this type of equipment from the military, it's more just for our protection than anything else. We're not here to seize and conquer anything. We're here to protect. Law enforcement has always gone on this warrior mantra for years and years and years. But what's really beginning to shift in law enforcement, and there's a general shift occurring in that we're no longer really in that warrior mode as much as we're in a guardian mode. We're guardians of the public. We're not here as warriors against the public. We're not fighting the public. That's not what we're here for. So for us to become militaristic is not what's happening. It really is more of a protection for the warriors that are now becoming those guardians of the peace. We're here to guard people, and we need those protections on the street. Because like I said, I've been involved in situations on multiple occasions, and it's scary, and it's nice to have that type of protection available to you. So is it needed in Cowles County? Absolutely. We can cite, both the sheriff and I can both cite numerous occasions where we've been in danger and have had to have that equipment, and it will absolutely save lives. And not only the lives of the deputies and officers in Cowles County, but also the public as well.
Thank you.
All right. As things are structured right now, a lot of the budget that goes out for the county in law enforcement side is for the court system and the jail. Is there anything that you think the Sheriff's Department can do to lessen that burden, Mr. Ullmann?
Lessen the burden on the jail?
The cost of jail and the court system.
I think it's time that, years ago, the jail and 911 and our records division were all split off of the sheriff's office. And this really came in a time when the county was really flush with money. The county had a lot of money. They were able to do these types of things and split off these different services and create new department heads for each one. Well, as the budgets have crunched down, we've discovered that maybe this isn't the best model after all. We're spending a lot of money on multiple things that the redundancy between each group is becoming apparent. I think maybe it's time that we have that discussion and maybe bringing the jail back under the sheriff's office. Maybe let's talk about how can we combine these services and reduce our costs. I'm not saying that we should run out and do that right now. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that it's time that we look at those numbers, let's compare them and see if it's feasible. If it's a feasible option through a cost-benefit analysis type examination, then yeah, let's talk about that. I think it's a very real discussion that should happen to save the taxpayers some money.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, same question. How do you think the Sheriff's Department could possibly minimize the cost of the court system and jail for the county?
Well, a couple things. First of all, those conversations that my opponent was talking about have been had. We've had those conversations now for a couple of years, at least. The discussion about bringing the jail, 911 records, all of those back under the sheriff's office have been explored. The opportunity for us to do that is always there. There's always that discussion. The decision of that is not the sheriff's to make. The decision for that goes with the county commissioners and also with the cities who contract with one another to provide those services. 911 is a separate department. Law enforcement records is a separate department. They're funded different, they have different directors, and they're not just going to go away and all of a sudden become under the sheriff. As far as the courts and in jail, is there something that the sheriff's office can do to help lessen the costs? I guess if we're not doing our job,
Stop arresting people.
Stop arresting people. That's gonna impact that certainly. But I think the answer is in what do we do on a continual basis. And we've been working with, collectively, as a county governing body, we work together, and we've developed, we have 3 different groups, and I probably don't have time to go into all of them, but we've got an innovations team, which I serve on with the commissioner, about 8 or 10 other county officials. We have a strategic group, and we have a sustainability committee. All of those committees work together looking at ways that we can do business, the best business that we can, the least expensive business for the county. So we're looking at all those things all the time and always have been internally and externally.
Thank you.
Gentlemen, we always tell our guests that this hour goes by really quickly, and we're at the halfway point already, and we've only asked you 7 questions, and we've got 10 more, so the second half of the show is going to be much harder, I think. To the folks at home, we are going to take that 3-minute break, and we'll be back with the candidates for the Cowles County Sheriff, Mark Nelson and Darren Ullmann, in about 3 minutes. Please stay tuned. We'll be right back.
The next 30 seconds can save you a lot of money. Just do your laundry in cold and stick to full loads. Auto-sleep your computers. Plug your gadgets in a power strip and switch it off when you're done. Headed out? Turn back your thermostat by 10 degrees. And drive sensibly. The more energy you save, the more money you save. Find other great tips at energysaver.gov.
So, Malcolm, you do know that energy savers last 6 times longer than ordinary light bulbs.
This isn't my room. It's Baron Davis's.
Aaron Davis, the basketball player? This is his room?
Yep.
Interesting, because we have Baron Davis right here. Baron, do you live here?
No.
I don't mean that, Baron Davis.
Millions of kids are using their energy wisely. What's your excuse?
Rob, what's up? How's it going? Guys, this is my cousin Rob from Michigan.
What's up?
He's a teenager.
Hey, what's up? All right. Oh, hey, you want to slow down?
No.
Really? Huh. Hey, you know what a beautiful animal is? A horse. A horse. Yeah. Beautiful mane. Unbelievable muscle tone. When it runs, it looks like poetry in motion. It's the most beautiful thing on earth. And sometimes when you feed a horse, its lips will tickle your hand. Just tickle it just a little bit. It makes me giggle sometimes. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you don't slow down, I'm going to bite into your head like an apple. And thanks, guys, for listening to my horse stories. I could talk about ponies all day long.
Really? Buzz, what's up, man? You left some leaves burning out here.
Yeah, I just came in just for a second.
Come on, man. If it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave. You could torch the whole neighborhood.
It's a good point there, Smokey.
9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Here's to the things that can keep us safe. those we use all the time with hardly a thought. Those that are silently standing by to save our lives. And now, those that we carry with us everywhere we go. Many mobile devices will now bring you wireless emergency alerts, real-time information directly from local sources you know and trust. With the unique sound and vibration, you'll be in the know, wherever you are.
Welcome back to Local Matters. My name is Barry Barrell, your host. With me, as usual, our co-host, David Fincher. And our guests tonight are the candidates for Cowlitz Sheriff's Department. They were both looking to be the next, or the, again, I guess, sheriff coming in November 5th at the election. And a little bit later in the show, David will tell you how important it is to vote, so be sure to listen to that.
Don't steal on my thunder.
Oh, sorry, David. I think the next question is mine, and I believe it goes to Mr. Nelson, Sheriff Nelson. Let's talk about gun control initiatives a little bit. I-591 or I-594. One would keep background checks pretty much the same, and one would alter it significantly. Which one do you support and why?
Well, yeah, that is an interesting question, and one that certainly is has a lot of people talking, a lot of people interested. I do have some significant concerns about I-594, primarily the way that it will impact the sheriff's office. The way that that initiative is written, it puts the responsibility for doing all of the background checks onto the sheriff. It's one of those unfunded mandates that we're all so fond of and familiar with. So for that reason, I have to tell you that I really cannot support I-594. It is not possible for the 39 sheriffs across this state to deal with all of the firearm sales and background checks that go along with that. They're going to have to look at something else to make that a viable initiative in my book. On the other hand, should the other initiative pass that keeps things at no different or no more restrictive than what the federal government has, you know, I'm a firm believer in the Second Amendment. I believe that people who have the right to own and bear a firearm, that is their right. What we seem to be missing as a nation is where all of our efforts are going, and it really needs to be going towards mental health issues. It needs to be going towards other issues that are the things that lead up to these kind of tragic shootings that we see happening across our country, that are the ones that shock the conscience. Anyway, that's where I stand on 594 and 591.
Thank you. Mr. Ullmann, the same question for you. Where do you stand on I-591 and I-594?
I'm a believer in gun rights as well. I believe that people deserve the right to bear arms. However, I'm also a believer that if you've been convicted of a felony, that you should not have a gun. And to take away that restriction and to allow anybody to purchase a gun without a background check, I won't agree with that. I think that it's imperative that we do the background investigations, and I understand it would be a huge burden on the sheriff's office, and I do not like the way that it's written. However, I don't think that taking away the background investigations is a good idea. I think if we have people that are restricted from owning firearms, there's a very good reason why they're restricted from owning a firearm, and we need to follow that up. If it's in the law, then we need to follow the law and you know, adhere to that. But at the same time, I agree with the sheriff, and I don't like the way it's written. I don't like the fact that there's too much in it as just an initiative, and I think that if it was rewritten, I would support it more, but I do support gun rights, but at the same time, I support background investigations on purchases of firearms.
So no on either one, is that what it sounds like?
Pretty much,
Okay.
pretty much,
That-
yeah.
That's not always an awful position for initiatives, to be honest. So let's talk a little bit about another initiative. We had the legalization of marijuana recently, and how has that changed the department? Does it actually maybe reduce the number of people who were put in jail? And how do you want to deal with the driving dangers, both with people in the county and how your officers are going to deal with those?
Excuse me. The marijuana issue for a long time, since the medical marijuana drive started a number of years ago, we've found it difficult prosecuting marijuana cases. So this isn't really anything new with this initiative that's come along. We really have had a different perspective on marijuana for a few years now, with medical marijuana being an issue. So it didn't, I can't say it's completely blindsided us in that, oh my gosh, now we don't arrest on it. There are still restrictions. We can still arrest people for possession of marijuana and for dealing marijuana and things like that. However, the driving piece of it makes it very difficult. We have to come up with better, easier ways for it to be detected. It's a very real thing, driving impaired, whether it's marijuana or alcohol or pills or whatever the case is. There's a number of ways people are getting intoxicated these days, and they're utilizing them all. And it's a very real problem, and it's going to really affect our DUI issues because it's so difficult to detect. We don't have a roadside test for that, and so it's what we have right now is a DRE, a drug recognition expert, but we have to call that person in, and it's a very detailed process to investigate it. So hopefully we can find a better way to process it, but it is becoming a very big issue for us as far as under the influence laws. Absolutely.
Gotcha. Mr. Nelson, same question. With how is this changing things at the department? Is it changing the number of prisoners you have in for that? And how do you want to educate your deputies and the public on the driving while high issues?
Well, the way that it's changed, I guess I wouldn't say that it's changed a lot, because driving under the influence of alcohol and or drugs has always been against the law. So that piece really hasn't changed. The prevalence of marijuana as a driving inhibitor really hasn't changed that much either, frankly. We're not seeing a big difference. The people of the state of Washington, in my opinion, really didn't get what they thought they were getting with I-502 and the passage of that initiative. What they believed that they were getting was legalized marijuana. That it was just marijuana is going to be legal from now on. Well, that's not the case. It is the case in some circumstances. In certain situations, it's lawful to possess lawfully manufactured, grown, and sold marijuana. However, the majority of the marijuana that is out there, it's not where it came from. And I don't see that that's going to change a whole lot, my personal feeling. I hope I'm wrong on that one, but I do believe that it's going to continue to be an issue. As far as the driving goes, DUI has always been an emphasis for us. It is again another stated goal for our agency that I put out this year to increase our DUI arrests by 5%. And so far we're on track for that, and that includes all of those ways that people get impaired. Like I said, that really hasn't changed. It's been like that since I first started in this business.
Gotcha.
Let's move to harder drugs, although I don't like that term. Drugs are drugs, basically. How do we combat meth and heroin and prescription drug use? And how can we work with our local doctors to lessen those infractions? It's for you, Mr. Nelson.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sure where you're starting there. Well, you've mentioned a couple of different things. you mentioned the methamphetamine issue, and then you mentioned prescription drugs. The issue with methamphetamine, first of all, those numbers we're seeing locally are declining in meth use. But correspondingly, we're seeing the use in opiates, in heroin, increasing tremendously. So, we went through this phase in the early 2000s, into mid 2000s, where methamphetamine was a tremendous issue. It was the scourge, and unfortunately, we don't have time for me to go into this, but I have some real strong feelings about how we became to see ourselves as the meth capital of the world, which we're not. We're a great, wonderful community where 99% of the people here are terrific, tremendous, wonderful, law-abiding, good folks. And our meth problem is not different than other places. Prescription drugs, I think that there are a lot of laws that are already in effect. The pharmaceutical companies, the pharmacies, they all know that this is an issue, and they're paying a lot closer attention to how those drugs are being dispensed, what they have to do with them. It doesn't mean it's not still a problem and it's not still out there. We know that it is. But we've got a variety of different ways in which we're addressing those things, both by the Narcotics Task Force, by Longview Street Crimes. They all have their own areas of expertise that they are working in, and they excel in those because they've been doing them a while now, and they are making an impact. They're making an impact in our community. They're keeping things, at least they're working towards that goal. It's the same goal that it's had since the first cop started arresting for drugs. So,
Mr. Ullmann, same question for you. How do we deal with the harder drugs?
I had worked undercover in the Drug Task Force. I also worked on our meth enforcement team when we first established it in its first incarnation. Our drug issue in Cowlitz County is a very real issue, and the sheriff's right. It did progress from being a predominantly meth issue to now it's a heroin issue. And from working with informants and working with dealers and people on the street, what I discovered was that basically it starts with the pills. It really does. You have kids in high school who will be playing sports and they'll get injured and they'll get prescribed Vicodin or something along that line. They'll enjoy that. They'll find out, hey, this makes me feel good. So then it progresses, and then now they're taking them at parties and they're getting them from friends, and it progresses in that way. Once they get out of high school, suddenly they don't have access to those pills like they did before, and they tend to go out and get into heroin. It's a progression that we see every day. It's happening over and over and over again. How do we stop that? We don't have the answer. If somebody had the answer, we would have done it by now, but nobody really has that answer. I can say, though, that our Drug Task Force in its current form obviously isn't solving the problem. I mean, we do have a drug problem, and the Drug Task Force has been there since about the mid-'80s, and we still have this drug problem. If we take the head drug dealer off the street, there's 10 more right behind him that's going to fulfill his role. What we need to target and what we need to look at is the street-level dealer, the street-level dealer/user. It's not just the fact that he's using, but the fact that he's ripping wire off of poles to burn wire for money. They're burglarizing our houses. These are the guys and gals that are burglarizing our cars. This is the criminals that we need to focus on, and that's why we need to create more of a county-wide street crimes model, like the Longview Police Street Crimes Unit. Our Drug Task Force has done wonderful things. They're a great unit, and I'm not saying that we should get rid of the Drug Task Force. I think it's time to reanalyze the way we're doing it. It's time to look at going after a different target more aggressively and getting those off the street to eliminate that street-level problem.
Thank you. Speaking a little bit more about drugs, the drug court program has been something that we've had here for a while now. Do you support the drug court program? Would you hope that it's expanded or reduced or just kind of maintained where it is?
The drug court, I have kind of mixed reviews on that because a lot of my informants that I used would use the drug court as a way to get out of trouble. Gotcha. Does it work? Absolutely it works. Absolutely. But it comes down to the person wanting it to work. We can't create the want in a person. Either they're going to utilize the tool that's available to them or they're not. So do I think it's a valuable tool? Absolutely. It's something that we need to have. We need to have it available for those that are willing to utilize it. But we have to have a mechanism to detect those that don't want to use it as for the right purpose, because they're using it to get out of trouble. They're coming to the drug task force and they're saying, I want to be an informant or whatever, to get out of having to go to jail. And it keeps them on the street. And so it's a fine line. It's a difficult task to filter through, but it has a role. It absolutely has a role. The mental health court has a role. I mean, it's absolutely imperative. I think that the sheriff had mentioned it earlier, the mental health issue is a huge issue. And I think it needs to be dealt with, and I think we have to do a joint effort with law enforcement and mental health and the community and any other entities that we can get together and deal with this, because that's what's driving our drug problem. It's our mental health issue. It's this cycle that our community has gotten into. It's the kids that wake up in the morning in the Highlands who don't know any better, that drugs aren't normal. They don't know that that's not normal. You can't do that. You can't break into cars to pay for dinner. That's not how it works. So it's breaking that cycle that we have to really start focusing on. Drug court is a way to help with that. The mental health court is a way to help with that. The way we enforce on the street level will help with that. But we have to work as a team, and we have to work as a county, not just the sheriff's office or Longview PD or the court, but we have to work as a team and learn to break this cycle within our community. And until we do that, it's going to continue to fester.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, same question. How do you feel about drug court? You want to expand, reduce? You hope it stays at the same levels? What's your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think drug court is a great program. It's proven itself to be an effective program. One interesting thing about drug court, and I always mention this whenever I get asked about drug court, is that to get into drug court, the first thing that has to happen, you got to get arrested. So it really begins with enforcement. Enforcement is important, and which is why we have good established organizations and units like the task force, Longview Street Crimes. Although their focus is not totally on drugs, they do an excellent job. I spoke earlier about having about one of my goals is to have a unit with the sheriff's office that does added investigations at a street level. This is part of what I'm talking about. All of those work in conjunction with one another. I know that Street Crimes works with the task force. I'm the chairman of the Cal-Sophiacum Narcotics Task Force Executive Board. I also serve on the executive board of the Northwest High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area, Northwest HIDA. So I'm familiar with the process and with what the current issues regarding drugs and enforcement are in our area, and the leadership role that's being taken to address those. Sadly, as was mentioned, there isn't an answer for it. There's no single thing. There's no single approach. There's no single thing that we can do, except keep working in concert with mental health, with law enforcement, with the courts, in getting these people the kind of help that they need to break the cycle. Can we get them all? No, we can't. But we can save a few, and that's worth it. It's worth every penny.
Thank you.
Domestic violence has been in the national news, and again, Mr. Nelson, this is for you first, in the last couple of days. Is it an issue here, and what can we do, if so, what can we do to lessen it?
Domestic violence is an issue everywhere, not just across the country, not just in Cowlitz County. It is an issue that we deal with nationally. Why that is, I think it is as much awareness, the reporting of it. I think it's always been there. It has been a cultural thing, much more with some cultures than with others, and in some parts of the country than with others. but it has been an issue that we've always dealt with. I truly believe that. A lot of that, I think the same thing with a lot of the child investigations, child assault investigations that we do. There's a lot more awareness, and people are reporting incidents that would not have been reported previously. You know, a number of years ago, we had a task force, the domestic violence task force, and there were a lot of good things that came out of that. There was a lot of victim contact and follow-up and communication. There were things that were being done publicly, but all that was grant funded. And of course, like many great programs, when the grant funding goes away, the program goes away. Not that the problem goes away, or that we wouldn't like to continue to be able to do that kind of an outreach to the community, but the funding is just not there. The people aren't there, and it's just part of the issue that we have, that we continue to face and deal with. It would be nice if there were other organizations that would tie in with government, other private or other public organizations that would tie in and take that up and take it out to the community more.
Mr. Ullmann, same question about domestic violence. Is it an issue here, and what can we do to lessen it if it is?
Domestic violence is one of those horrible issues that it happens within the home, so it's almost impossible to stop because it's usually generational. People have grown up with it, and they don't know that that's not normal, like I mentioned before. So domestic violence is a horrible, horrible thing, and it's very, very prevalent in Cowlitz County. Part of my duties right now is I oversee the leveling of sex offenders within our county. And I can tell you that we are per capita the highest in the state for sex offenders. And there's two ways to look at that number. Number one, do we have a lot of sex crimes occurring in our county? Absolutely. But on the other side of that is, are we prosecuting more than anybody else in the state? That's very possible too. But the crimes are there. Regardless if it's just occurring or we're prosecuting, the crimes are happening. Part of what I want to do, if elected, is to create a major crimes unit that focuses on exactly that. We have to go after the domestic violence issue. We have to go after the kids that are being victimized. It's a horrible thing. I read these reports every day, and it absolutely just makes your skin crawl. It's a horrible thing to read, and it's happening. Every day it's happening. So we have to come up with a way, and again, I don't have the answer, but I want to bring people together to discuss this. Let's talk about some alternative ways of doing business that we can start to address these issues. Is it through education? Is it through enforcement? I don't know. I don't have that yet, but that's what we're going to find. And we're going to get together and we're going to create this group, this major crimes unit that's going to be their central focus. They'll do other things. They'll handle a lot of other things, but one of their main focuses will be domestic violence and sex crimes, and especially sex crimes against children.
All right, we got time for one more?
I think we got time for one more.
All right. We have you both here, and you have, I think, Mr. Ullmann, you're running as an independent, and the sheriff's running as a Democrat. Should this position be an elected and then a political position, or should it just be an appointment by the commissioners? What's your take on that, Mr. Ullmann?
Part of the reason I'm running as independent is that I really feel that the partisan politics don't belong in the sheriff's office. I feel the same way for the prosecutor's office. I think the prosecutor's position should be a neutral position as well. It should just be completely nonpartisan. And that's why I'm running as an independent, because I'm very adamant in that. I think it's a critical piece that we don't police based on politics, so why do we run the office based on politics? To elect a person just simply because they're a Democrat or Republican has no merit on their ability to run the office. And it's crazy that we still do that, but I understand it is the process. That's what we should do. As far as having commissioners select a person, I don't know. I haven't thought that far down the road. I think we're a long ways from that. But I think in the interim, I think it's absolutely that the sheriff should be like a judge. and it should be nonpartisan. I think the prosecutors should be nonpartisan. Just because we are neutral, we need to remain neutral, and we shouldn't have any bias either way on as far as politics are concerned.
Thank you. Mr. Nelson, same question. What do you think about the political side of your office?
Well, I take just a little umbrage at the comment that the sheriff's office is, that we need to take the politics out of the sheriff's office. I would challenge anybody to bring about any decision or action that's taken place in the sheriff's office where politics was behind it or the driving force behind it. That's just not been the case. The fact that it is a political office, I don't have any control over that. It just is. It is not a nonpartisan office, and that's set by the state parties, by the Democratic Party, by the Republican Party. They're the ones who make those decisions. It's not the decision of the sheriff or anybody at that level. So my being part of the Democratic Party is really, honestly, it's what I grew up with. You know, I mean, my dad ran as a Democrat. Many of the people that I know, I have people from across the board. I've got Republicans, I've got independents, I've got libertarians, I've got you know, all of those people who are supportive, and they know that it's about the person. It's about the person wearing the badge and carrying the position, and not the political end of it. So who I spend my time with, you know, or work with, really doesn't have any bearing, has not had any bearing on the office. In fact, I sort of went against a number of people in that my party supported. So that's just the way things were, because we're going to enforce the law.
That's right.
I think we're going to end up going maybe a couple of minutes over, but no more than a couple of minutes, because we're at the closing portion of the show, and I believe, Mr. Ullmann, you will go first. And instead of giving you a full 2 minutes, we'll just give you 1 minute to speak directly into that camera and tell the voters at home on November 5th why you should be their candidate.
I'm running for sheriff because it's time that we get a fresh perspective into the sheriff's office. We've had the same leadership model since the 1980s, and law enforcement is changing. Whether we like it or not, it's really evolving into a different world than it was in the 1980s. And I've written a strategic plan, and our office will follow that plan, and we'll have a guided focus for the next 4 years on exactly where we need to be and how we can improve with little. I understand that we don't have a lot of money, that money isn't coming in, so we're going to work with what we have, we're going to work within our means, and we're going to be a very efficient, proactive department that my fellow deputies agree with me, and they've endorsed me, and they believe that I can lead us to that next level. So I'm running again as an independent because I really believe that the sheriff's office should be a neutral position, and I will make it that way. So hopefully I'll get your support in November.
Mr. Nelson, your 1 minute and same camera.
Same camera. I've served this county for 37 years. I've done it honorably. I've done it truthfully. I've served with a humble heart. I'm appreciative of the fact that the voters have seen fit to put me in this position. And I believe that what we've shown and what we've seen over the last 4 years, as far as the sheriff's office goes, is that we are a quality agency, public service agency, and we take care of our community because we care about them. That's what the sheriff's office is. That's what it's about. We also have a strategic plan. It happens to be one that has been written in concert with the rest of the county. That is what drives the budget for the county. It's a process we've gone through this past year. I have had your support in the past. I'm grateful for that. I'm humbled by it, and I would appreciate your support and your vote in November. Thank you.
Gentlemen, thank you very much for tonight. Dave, I'm going to give you 30 seconds and that camera to tell the folks at home what they should do on November 5th. November 4th.
There's no reason that we shouldn't all go out and vote, except that we maybe drop it in the mail. That's okay. You don't have to go out if you drop it in the mail, but you've got to be involved. If you want to have a real say in what happens in your local area, this is the election for you. It may not come across as a sexy one with no presidential candidate, but yeah, the folks that you've heard from tonight, your sheriff's candidates, the prosecutor, the county commissioners, and then moving on up to the state house, those are key offices that really impact what happens for you in your house and in the local area. So please make sure you participate in the election, get involved, and make sure that your voice is heard so that we can have the county and local area that we want.
Again, gentlemen, thank you for tonight. And David, the last question as always is for you. We're off next week, but who's here on the 17th?
In 2 weeks, we'll have Mark Smith and Joe Gardner, who are fighting it out to take the county commissioner spot. So that should be interesting, and I hope everybody can join us then.
To the folks at home, hope you learned a little bit about your sheriff's department today, and we've given you two very great candidates to choose from, so make sure you do vote.
That's the 24th.
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 Did I say the 17th?
You might have, because it's not, that's what's on the paper.
Oh, I might have said the 17th.
It's the 24th.
It's the 24th. Two candidates for the sheriff's department, for the sheriff, and both are awesome candidates. Just make sure you're involved. Get out and vote. They've done their part. Now it's your turn to do your part. For David, I'm Barry, thanking you for watching tonight, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time, the 24th.